Chapter 724. Pang. It was another violent clash, causing a muffled sound that made people's hearts shrink. Waves of wind blew in all directions. Under the ferocious attack of the axe and sword, even with the annihilation strike technique, Noah seemed to be wearing a sturdy gauntlet. He was not cut open by the axe and sword. However, from the huge axe and sword, the terrifying strength of the A+ level was transmitted to Noah's body. It made Noah feel as if he was hitting a wall made of steel, and he was constantly pushed back. Pang! When he was pushed back, his feet directly stepped on the ground and exploded. It was as if a small bomb had exploded, creating a small crater. The crater was surrounded by cracks, like a spider web. Even so, Noah still resisted the numbness from his fists and the terrifying strength from the axe and continued to attack Berserker. In other people's eyes, Noah and Berserker were fighting head-on like savages. However, only Noah knew that Berserker was not just blindly swinging his sword and relying on brute force to suppress his opponent. At least, in Noah's eyes, Berserker's huge and ferocious axe and sword were like a windmill that was swinging from all directions. Every swing followed the most mysterious, shortest, and most difficult to defend against. This kind of technique, a person who had completely fallen into madness would not be able to use it. That is to say, even if he had gone berserk, as a great hero in Greek mythology, the sword skills of the god of strength were still engraved on his body. It was like his instinct, even if he had gone berserk, he would still be able to use it. Therefore, Noah was not only facing a giant with astonishing brute force, but also a hero with superb sword skills. In this kind of situation, to be able to follow Berserker's sword attacks and accurately clash with Berserker's sword was enough to show that Noah's fighting skills were not ordinary. Unfortunately, Noah was still at a disadvantage. Even with the enhanced magic and the annihilation strike technique, Noah's strength was still not as good as the A+ level Berserker. In terms of combat skills, as the great hero who had completed 12 impossible tasks in Greek mythology, the knowledge that he had learned in his life was naturally better than the combat skills that Noah had diligently practiced for less than 20 years. His strength was not comparable. His technique was not comparable. How could Noah not be at a disadvantage? There was only one thing that Noah had an advantage. That is, Noah was calm and rational. Berserker, on the other hand, was in a berserk state. Therefore, Noah was waiting. Waiting for Berserker to reveal a flaw. Pang pang. Under such circumstances, the ruthless and malevolent axe and the fist that was covered with a vortex of air continued to clash against each other. Waves of violent wind and gales shook out, causing the surrounding leaves that were scattered all over the ground to flutter back and forth, pervading the entire forest. After a while, Rin Enbin and Ilya finally recovered from the shock. They could see who had the advantage between Noah and Berserker. It's useless. Ilya only had eyes for Noah as she stared at Noah who was fighting with Berserker. My Berserker is the strongest, no one can defeat him. This isn't good. Rin and Osaka's expression also became gloomy. If this continues, that guy will not be able to hold on. Just as this thought flashed through Rin Enbin's mind, a weak voice echoed in his mind. Rin, are you okay? Archer. Rin Enbin was stunned, then he was delighted. Idiot, I should be the one saying that. I'm fine, but I took a direct hit from Berserker. My head is dizzy, and I won't be able to stand up for a while. Archer forcefully pulled himself together and said to Rin Enbin. So, Rin, you have to do something. Me? Rin Enbin was stunned. As you can see, even though that man is on par with the great hero, he is still at a disadvantage. Moreover, he is only a human. Once he enters a battle of attrition, he will run out of mana and stamina eventually. On the other hand, the servant is an existence that can convert mana into movement. As long as he has enough mana, his stamina will never end. If this continues, that man will run out of stamina first. Archer calmly analyzed the situation. Moreover, that man seems to be waiting for Berserker to reveal a flaw. However, Berserker's real body is that of the great Greek hero, Hercules. Even if he is in a frenzy, the skills and instincts engraved in his body are still very amazing. It is very likely that he will reveal a flaw in the next second. It is also very likely that he will not be able to wait until that man's strength is exhausted. Therefore, you must help that man. Rin Enbin immediately raised his head, and once again looked at the two people who were engaged in a violent battle, his eyes flashing. Both Rin Enbin and Archer didn't know. In fact, Noah had a self-created respiratory art. Even though his stamina wasn't limitless, if he continued to use it, it wouldn't be a problem until the next morning. That was why Noah chose to wait. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to fight in such a disadvantageous situation. Archer, who didn't know about this, made the right judgment. Don't worry, you can do whatever you want. If you seize the opportunity, you will definitely be able to create an opening for that man. Archer's voice echoed in Rin Enbin's mind. Don't forget, there is still a servant who disappeared from the scene. After being reminded by Archer, Rin Enbin's heart shook. He took a deep breath and stood up. I understand, Archer. You seized the opportunity. I understand, Archer said, and then went silent. At this moment, the situation on the battlefield finally changed. Just as Noah and Berserker were bombarding each other in the most violent form, like two chariots that were constantly colliding with each other, Noah and Berserker bombarded each other repeatedly. Whoosh! Behind Berserker's back, a sharp dagger connected to a chain broke through the air like an arrow and shot towards Berserker's thick back with an ear-piercing sound. Roar! Berserker, who was preparing to swing his sword again, instinctively paused. The ferocious axe in his hand let out a furious roar. He suddenly turned around and viciously swung his sword at the chain dagger that was shooting towards him. Clank! The sound of metal clashing echoed in the forest. The short sword with monster strength was knocked away by Berserker's sword and returned to Rider, who was standing on top of a tree. At the same time, Archer's voice rang in Rindosaka's mind. He had been observing the scene with clairvoyance and mind's eye. Rin Enbin's expression froze. In his hand, he threw the gemstones that he had been holding all this while towards Berserker's head. Bang! The gemstones exploded and turned into a dense light that enveloped Berserker's body. Immediately, Berserker felt like he was being pressed down by a heavy mountain. His whole body suddenly sank, and even the sword in his hand drooped down. Noah suddenly raised his head. His deep eyes flashed with a terrifying expression. Now! The magic patterns that spread all over Noah's body suddenly contracted and gathered in one of Noah's hands. Dense magic surged from Noah's palm. In an instant, the hand that was shining with magic patterns pierced towards Berserker's heart. Poochie! Blood splattered into the sky. Chapter 725. Poochie. Under the stab of Noah's palm, which was covered with the magic patterns of enhanced magic, Berserker's broad chest was directly pierced through by Noah where his heart was. Roar! The roar that belonged to Berserker resounded through the night sky. There seemed to be a hint of berserk in his voice that only an injured beast would have. After all, he was still a servant who had the ability to continue fighting. Even though his heart had been pierced, Berserker still had the ability to move. After roaring angrily, he raised the huge and ferocious axe in his hand and swung it at Noah's head with lightning speed. Noah's hand had already sunk into his heart. Feeling the oppressive wind coming from above his head, Noah actually closed his eyes. Buzz! In the next moment, Noah's hand that pierced Berserker's heart flashed with a burst of magical light. I don't believe that you won't die if I directly release the magic cannon in your body. After finishing his words, a dazzling magical light shone from Berserker's body. Bang! In just a moment, Berserker's tall and strong body directly exploded into a pile of minced meat. Under the cover of the sky full of flames and the rich magical light, he was annihilated into pieces of charcoal. Then, Noah's figure shot out from the sky full of flames and the rich magical light and landed on the ground. With one hand on the ground, his body half crouched down. After rubbing against the ground for a very long distance, he finally stopped. And in the sky full of flames and the rich magical light, Berserker's lower body was still standing there. He was like a giant who would never surrender to his fate. He stood there without falling, which really confirmed his reputation as a great hero. However, no matter how strong he was, in the absence of mana, even if his relic had the ability to nullify all attacks below grade B, he would still be dead if half of his body was blown up by Noah's mana cannon, which was directly released from his body with all his might. As the great hero of the myths, Berserker of Hercules had finally died once. Yes. He had only died once. Under the watchful eyes of Noah, Rin and Akka, Rider, and Archer, the remaining half of Berserker's body began to glow red. Chi, chi. A sizzling sound like a flame being extinguished began to sound from the remaining half of Berserker's body. In the next second, it was as if time had reversed. Around the remaining half of Berserker's body, pieces of his body began to appear out of thin air. They gathered together and gradually formed the missing half of Berserker's body, allowing Berserker to recover to his original state. Roar! With a flash of red light in his eyes, Berserker suddenly raised his head and let out a roar that shook the air. Seeing this, Rin Enbin couldn't help but take a step back as her expression changed. So, it's possible to resurrect. Even Noah couldn't help but frown as a troubled look appeared on his face. It was a legendary hero that could be resurrected 11 times. It had to be killed 12 times before it completely disappeared. It was the highest level of heroic spirit. If that was the case, it would still be fine. The problem was that the 12 trials, God's hand, not only could resurrect Berserker and nullify attacks that were below B level, it could also nullify all attacks that Berserker had received. In other words, Noah, who had just fired a mana cannon into Berserker's body, wouldn't be able to do anything to Berserker if he were to use it again. The real problem isn't Hercules, but his noble phantasm. Noah's frown deepened. If we don't find a way to deal with the 12 trials, God's hand, it would be extremely difficult to defeat Berserker. Master. Rider appeared from the fog and arrived behind Noah. He was also looking at Berserker, who was roaring in front of him. There was a hint of heaviness in his voice. Do you need me to do it? The meaning of this sentence was not that Rider wanted to participate in the battle from now on, but that he wanted to use all his skills and relic to fight against Berserker. Noah also stood up and looked at Berserker. He did not turn his head and said, "There's no other way. Since the opponent has already taken out his relic, if we don't return the favor, it would be unreasonable." Understood. Rider immediately responded. Archer. On the side, Rin Enbin also ordered his servant. Can you move again? If not, I can only use the command spell. Only the master could use the command spell. Not only could it restrict the servant, but it could also turn the command into power, allowing the servant to exert extraordinary strength. Even if Archer could not move, as long as Rin Enbin used the command spell and gave the command to defeat the opponent, then even if Archer could not move, his body would be driven to fight under the command of the command spell. Knowing this, Archer could only helplessly say, "That's the only way." Just when Noah and the others were ready to use their skills, Ilya, who had been silently looking at Noah, suddenly laughed. She laughed very happily. Interesting, really interesting. Undoubtedly, you're just a human, but you can directly confront my Berserker and even kill him once. Big brother, I didn't know you were so interesting. Ilya's bell-like laughter made everyone, including Noah, stare blankly for a moment. Then, they looked at each other in confusion. It was because the trace of cruelty and killing intent that had existed until now in Ilya's innocent voice had disappeared. Okay, it's decided. Ilya thought of something and ordered Berserker. Come back first, Berserker. Hearing Ilya's words, Berserker's violent aura gradually began to dissipate. The bulging muscles on his body also slowly relaxed. Holding the huge ferocious axe and sword, he stepped back with loud footsteps and returned behind Ilya. Like a loyal guard, he no longer made a sound. Seeing this, not to mention Rin Enbin, even Noah narrowed his eyes and looked at Ilya. What do you mean by this? I just don't want to fight anymore. Ilya put her small hands behind her back and closed her eyes with a smile. She seemed to be in a very good mood. I thought that this Holy Grail war would be very boring, but since there's such an interesting person like Big Brother, it would be a pity to kill you now. So, I don't want to fight anymore. I'll slowly play with Big Brother in the future. After saying this, Ilya seemed to have thought of something and said to Noah. However, this forest is my territory. My villa is here. Big Brother, you can't suddenly barge in like today. Otherwise, I'll get angry again. Leaving this sentence, Ilya turned around and skipped away from the scene. Looking at Ilya's petite figure gradually disappearing into the distance and recalling Ilya's words, Noah was silent for a moment before looking at Rin Enbin. You actually brought me to the enemy's base. Rin Enosaka's face also stiffened after hearing Ilya's words. When she heard Noah's words, her face immediately burned. She crossed her arms and turned her head away. What? What can I do? Sakura's safety is the most important thing. Since it's the most important thing, can I trouble you to find a safer place to talk? So annoying. It's because it's the most important thing that I messed up. Undoubtedly, the second and third important things can be solved perfectly. But the most important thing can't be done properly. Noah finally understood. The young lady of the Enbin family in front of him was a troublemaker who would drop the ball at critical moments. Chapter 726. In a restaurant in Fuyuki City, Noah and Rin Enosaka sat opposite each other. One had a cup of black coffee in front of him, and the other had a cup of black tea in front of him. One was speechless, and the other was sullen. The sullen one was of course Rin Enosaka. This girl seemed to still be vexed that she had brought Noah into the Baron family's headquarters, causing Ilya to attack with Berserker, causing everyone to fall into a bitter battle. However, if it was Noah, he would probably be annoyed too. After all, Rin Enosaka actually knew. She knew that the Ahrensburg mansion was in the depths of the forest, and she also knew that it was the enemy's base. In the end, because of Mitsuyama Sakura, Rin Enosaka forgot about this matter and foolishly brought Noah into Ilya's territory, leading to Ilya's attack. Originally, Noah thought that Ilya just happened to be active in the forest. Who knew that he would bring Berserker out and threaten to kill everyone as soon as he appeared? It was all because Rin Enbin brought Noah into Ilya's territory, causing her to think that Noah and Rin Enbin were here to cause trouble. That was why she appeared. How should he put it? She even forgot such an important matter. Isn't Rin Enosaka too much? In any case, Rin Enosaka would screw up on the most important matter. Noah thoroughly experienced it and firmly remembered it in his heart, so as to avoid being tricked by this girl in the future. Noah sighed when he saw that Rin Tozaka was going to continue to be annoyed. Then, as the result of luckily escaping a disaster, and also as the price for causing trouble, Miss Enosaka, do you want to reward me with a meal? After that, although Rin Enosaka was annoyed, she didn't let Noah go. Instead, she invited Noah here as if she had something to say. I know that it's all my fault, but it has already happened. It's useless to apologize. It's better to talk about something useful. Rin Enbin finally recovered from his vexed state. He looked straight at Noah and asked. I want to ask you, do you have a way to deal with Berserker? It seems that even though the process was quite unpleasant, Rin Anaka still felt threatened by Ilya's servant. Or rather, no one would think that Berserker was not a threat, right? Not only did he have such an exaggerated ability value, but he also had such a foul relic. To put it bluntly, even Noah felt that in this Holy Grail war, if it was a one-on-one battle, there should not be a stronger servant than Berserker. Noah was actually quite confident in his rider's abilities. However, after today's battle, even Noah felt that it would be difficult for Ryder to defeat Berserker even if he used all his skills and relics. Thus, Noah said bluntly, "No, that guy just happened to hit my weak spot. It's not a problem to fight evenly, but I don't have the confidence to defeat him." With Noah's physique, he was not afraid of any mystical threats in the realm of God. However, Berserker was an expert in hand-to-hand combat. Noah did not lack the confidence to deal with Berserker without the use of his authority. However, if he wanted to defeat Berserker, Noah dared not say that he had 100% confidence in defeating him. Even with Ryder's full power, it should not be a problem to completely suppress Berserker. However, it would be a different story if he wanted to defeat Berserker. Therefore, for Noah, Berserker was also very difficult to deal with. The difficult part was that Berserker was simply immortal and could not be killed. If we don't think of a way to defeat that relic, it would be impossible for us to win. Noah shook his head. Although Ryder and I have yet to use our trump cards, we're not sure if they'll work on Berserker who has that relic. So, if you're asking me if I have a way to deal with him, my answer is yes, but I can't guarantee that it'll work. You still have a trump card that you haven't used? Rin was dumbfounded when he heard this unexpected news. Where did this monster come from? Not only did he have the ability to fight Berserker head-on, but he also had a trump card that he had not used yet. In addition, he mentioned that he had a trump card that was effective against magicians. This man in front of him was no less difficult to deal with than Berserker. If that was the case, this man's servant had not used his relic yet, right? As he thought about this, Rin felt more and more stressed. He was even a little flustered and exasperated. Damn it, why isn't Archer that powerful? As soon as he finished his sentence, Archer, who was in his spiritual form, spoke in a displeased tone. I'm really sorry that I can't help you. Forget it, we still have a command spell that we haven't used. It's not like we don't have any other means. Rin waved his hand and then remembered. Oh yeah, I seem to have used one of my command spells. Only after hearing this did Noah realize that there was a command spell on the back of Rin's hand that was blurring. That was the proof that it was used. You still have the nerve to say that? Archer's voice sounded again. You actually wasted a command incantation on something like, obey everything I say. Ling, what do you want me to say to you? For servants, the restriction of the command spell was also different. For example, the more vague the command was, the lower the effect. If it was an instantaneous command or a specific command, it would have a high degree of coercion. For example, a command like, come here, could even be used to teleport through space. If the execution of the command was too long, or the range was too wide, the effect would be reduced. If a command like, obey everything I say, was effective, then there would be no need for 3 command incantations to exercise the authority of 3 commands. Only 1 command incantation was needed, and the servant would continue to obey. Why would there be any need to worry about the servant's betrayal or disobedience? Therefore, this command was almost useless. In other words, if Rin gave such an order, then it was really a waste of a command spell. You're so annoying, who told you to be so arrogant? Rin said in a bad mood. Moreover, it's not completely useless. You also said that as long as it's not something that you resist from the bottom of your heart, then there's no way to disobey me, right? Since it's something that I don't resist from the bottom of my heart, then even if I don't use the command spell, I will still listen to you, right? Archer sighed heavily. So, in terms of results, it's still a waste. Hearing the conversation between the two, Noah was speechless again. This Rin Anbin was even more unreasonable than Noah thought. And then Noah could only change the topic. Now that you know what I'm doing, what are your plans? That's right, I do plan to do so. Rin Anbin's expression turned serious. I want to work with you for the time being. Work together. Noah raised an eyebrow. You mean, the two of us will work together during the Holy Grail War? Although you have a lot of methods that I don't have, but against Berserker, you also don't have the confidence to win, right? Rin Anbin nodded. If that's the case, then let's work together. This way, the chances of winning against Berserker will be higher, right? Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself for a moment before replying. Ryder, what do you think? Noah had just asked when Ryder, who was also in spirit form, immediately spoke. I'll let Master decide. Noah slightly frowned as he fell into deep thought. Didn't you say that you didn't want Sakura to see us fight? Rin Tozaka asked slyly. Then, if we work together, it should be a good choice, right? This sentence made Noah frown. He was a bit unhappy. You're using this as an excuse. But it's also a fact, isn't it? Rin Anbin shrugged. What do you think? That's realistic, right? This time, Noah was helpless. This Rin Anbin really knew how to take advantage of loopholes. Chapter 727. On a high hill in Fuyuki City, there was a mansion that was as big as the mansion. The walls were covered with vines and looked like they had been there for a long time. Currently, there was only one person living in such a manor house. Compared to the size of the mansion, the number of people living here was pitifully small. It was so small that it could not even be described as luxurious. This mansion was the mansion of the Enosaka family, Rin Enosaka's home. The manager of the spirit vein in Fuyuki City lived here. At this time, the sky was completely dark. In the hall on the second floor of the manor house, Noah walked around the vast Western-style hall. Finally, he stopped in front of a table and cast his eyes on it. Over there was a framed photograph that was placed on top of it. The photo seemed to be a family portrait. He was a very handsome man. She looked like a virtuous woman. There was also a young girl who looked very happy. These three people made up the family portrait in front of Noah. It showed the structure of the Enosaka family in front of Noah. Noah recognized them at a glance. The little girl was Rin Enosaka when she was young. So, the man and woman next to her should be Rin Enosaka's parents. However, Noah didn't see half a shadow of such parents after entering Enosaka's house. Obviously, Rin Enosaka's parents were not here. Where did Rin Enosaka's parents go? Noah did not ask this question. The reason was simple. As a magician, Rin Enosaka's parents must be related to the magic world. Living in a world full of lunatics, Noah could only think of one reason why Rin Enosaka's parents were not at home. They were dead. If that was the case, what was the point of asking? At this time, Rin Enosaka pushed the door open with a cup of hot black tea in her hand. Sorry, there's only black tea in the house. You seem to like coffee, right? It's okay. Black tea is fine too. Noah turned around and sat down on the sofa. Some of my friends like black tea too. I don't hate it. In the former Kyuji mansion, there was Yuju who liked black tea very much. At that time, Noah drank black tea almost every day. If Qingzi hadn't successfully transitioned Noah into a coffee fanatic out of bad intentions, Noah would still be drinking black tea now. Lilith, on the other hand, was very fond of milk tea, Erica liked cappuccino, and Alice was also a fan of black tea. Even Leah and the others usually preferred black tea. Noah got used to it after a while. Is that so? Rin and Osaka put the black tea cup in front of Noah and spoke to a place where there was no one around. If it's Archer and Ryder, it shouldn't be necessary, right? With that, Archer and Ryder dispelled their spiritual forms behind Rin and Osaka and Noah respectively and appeared in the air. Ryder was as quiet as ever. He stood behind Noah like a loyal guard, not moving an inch. Archer glanced at the cup of hot black tea on the table, crossed his arms, and closed his eyes. Undoubtedly, you only prepared a cup of black tea. You didn't prepare any for us, Rin. Rin and Osaka tilted his head. So you want it? No, I don't want to drink it. Archer sighed. But this is a question of sincerity, right? Don't mind it, don't mind it. Rin and Osaka waved his hand nonchalantly and quickly threw Ryder and Archer to the back of his mind. He looked at Noah seriously. You said you have a way to deal with Berserker. What's the specific plan? The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Looking at Rin and Osaka's serious expression, Noah picked up the cup of black tea, took a sip, and said, There are 3 methods. The simplest method, the stupidest method, and the most reliable method, but I'm not sure if it'll work. You can come up with so many plans to deal with a monster like that. I underestimated you. Rin and Osaka patted his cheeks and pulled himself together. Then, let's talk about the simplest method. The simplest method, which is also the most impractical method, is to directly deal with Berserker's master, Elia Field. Noah gave such an answer. As everyone knows, the reason why servants are able to maintain their forms in this world is because of their master's magic. As long as they lose their master, no matter how strong the servants are, they can only grieve. Furthermore, Berserker doesn't have the ability to act alone. So, rather than dealing with Berserker, it is more practical to deal with Iliosphère. But you also said that it's the most impractical method, right? Rin and Osaka seemed to understand Noah's meaning inside. Unless we can immediately launch an attack the moment we face Iliosphère and finish him off with the first strike, we won't be able to avoid Berserker and take down Iliosphère. Therefore, that was the simplest and most impractical method. It was also known to all masters and servants. After all, every master had a command seal on them. If they chose to use this method, they would have to deal with Elia Field in the first strike. Otherwise, when Elia Field reacted, she could use the command seal to summon Berserker back to her side. That was also the reason why Noah didn't directly attack Elia and chose to fight Berserker instead. Besides, Berserker's instinct was stronger than his rationality. If he attacked Ilya, who knows what kind of stimulation that monster would receive. Therefore, this method was both the simplest and the least practical. And the stupidest method is to slowly wear down Berserker's noble phantasm's resurrection count. Noah spread his hands. If we have overwhelming power on our side, the so-called immortal body is not that difficult to deal with at all. We can slowly wear down Berserker, or even directly take away several of his lives at once. It was just like Phoenix in the world of Demon High School. Riesel, who also had an undying body, couldn't even withstand a single blow in front of such overwhelming power. It's a pity. Although we're working together, we don't have overwhelming power, right? Rin Anbin frowned. Or, does your rider have a decisive noble phantasm that can achieve this goal? Indeed, but even if we use it, taking away a few of Berserker's lives wouldn't be a problem. However, it's not ideal to directly kill Berserker. Noah shook his head. To be honest, I'm not even sure if a noble phantasm that can take away 12 of Berserker's lives really exists. That means, our best choice is the most reliable method that you mentioned, but we can't be sure if it'll work. Rin Anbin's tone was slightly heavy. What's that method? Actually, I've encountered an immortal body quite a few times. Noah supported his face with his hands and leaned his elbows on the armrest. His eyes flickered slightly. No matter which immortal body it is, the most fundamental weakness is the spirit. Spirit. Rin Anbin was slightly stunned. Then, he reacted and his eyes lit up. Do you mean that although Berserker's body can be resurrected, there's no way to resurrect his spirit? I have a method that can directly destroy the opponent's spirit. Noah said. If Berserker's spirit can't be resurrected with a noble phantasm, as long as his spirit is destroyed, even if his body isn't destroyed, what's left is just a shell that won't move. Chapter 728. For Noah, an immortal body was not that difficult to deal with. That might be troublesome, but only to the extent of being troublesome. Berserker's noble phantasm could not only nullify attacks below B rank, but it could also nullify attacks that had been used once. It was equivalent to an immortal body, not to mention the fact that it could be resurrected. It was simply cheating. However, regardless of whether it was an immortal body or resurrection, Noah had encountered them many times. Therefore, Noah was not surprised that the great hero in Greek mythology had such an ability, even though he found it troublesome. Of course, there were ways to deal with it. Destroy the opponent's spirit. The body was immortal, but the spirit could not be immortal, right? The body could be resurrected, but the spirit could not be resurrected, right? If he used one of the three major spells of the fairy tale, it could directly destroy the opponent's mind. It was a super spell known as the super trial spell, the fairy law. It was possible to destroy Berserker's mind in one fell swoop and turn him into a living dead. After knowing that Noah had such a method, Rin Enbin was surprised, but at the same time, he also noticed a problem. Since you said that you are not sure if it will work, there should be some drawbacks, right? Smart. Noah smiled bitterly. To be honest, although I have such a method, I can't guarantee that it will be able to destroy the servant's spirit. As he said that, Noah even explained himself. Originally, the servant's spirit was like a spirit. As a heroic spirit, it is easy to imagine how strong his spirit and spirit are. In addition, Berserker is the Hercules who completed the 12 impossible missions. With such an extreme experience, his endurance and spirit are immeasurable. I am not sure if my method can destroy Berserker's spirit in one fell swoop. After hearing Noah's words, Rin Enbin was silent. Even Ryder and Archer had a slightly troubled expression on their faces. Presumably, they weren't sure if Noah's method would succeed in one fell swoop. Of course, the strength of this method is related to my magic and how well I can use it. With my magic, I am more or less confident that I can destroy the spirit of a heroic spirit. Noah smiled. He brought both good and bad news. The problem is that this method requires a lot of time. You've seen Berserker's ability to charge forward. If you're careless, you'll die, let alone use a method that requires a long time to prepare. Therefore, if we really need to use this method, we can only rely on you guys to buy us some time. This was one of the reasons why Noah chose to work with Rin Enbin. If he only wanted to deal with Berserker, Noah and Ryder would be enough. There was no need to work with Rin Enbin. However, if he wanted to defeat Berserker, it was necessary to work with Rin Enbin. When the time comes, Ryder will have to protect me from other factors. Only you two can deal with Berserker, Noah said to Rin Enbin. As long as you can buy time, our chances of winning are not small. After he finished speaking, the entire place suddenly fell silent. Rin Enbin seemed to be considering the feasibility of the plan. In the end, he nodded and looked at Archer. Archer, are you confident that you can defeat Berserker? If you want me to defeat that monster, even I wouldn't dare to say that I am confident. Archer closed his eyes and smiled. But if I say that I can't defeat Berserker and buy time, won't you be more disappointed in me? Let's be clear. I have never been disappointed in you. Of course, there are many things that I want to complain about. Rin Enbin smiled. So, Archer, I will depend on your performance. Yeah, this is really hard work. Archer shrugged helplessly. I can only say that I will try my best. Have you decided? Noah shrugged. Then our cooperation is confirmed. Yes. Rin Enbin smiled and moved his head forward. He looked straight into Noah's dark eyes. Thank you for your guidance, Mr. Noah. Just call me Noah. Noah glanced at Rin Enbin. If you are polite to me now, I won't be used to it. That's it then. Rin Enbin nodded in satisfaction and stretched his back. As for how to deal with the other masters and servants, we will come up with a plan after we gather enough information. Deal with the other masters and servants. Noah was taken aback. After hesitating for a while, he asked with uncertainty. Don't tell me that our cooperation doesn't stop until we get rid of Berserker. Yes, that was my plan from the beginning. Rin Enbin asked in a strange tone. But you don't want Sakura to see us kill each other, right? I do have such a plan. Noah raised an eyebrow. However, you wouldn't choose not to fight me because of this reason, right? How is that possible? Rin Enbin's relaxed expression slowly disappeared. He looked at Noah with a serious expression. As the daughter of the Enbin family, my goal is to win this Holy Grail war. The Holy Grail only belongs to one person. My victory with you will only be delayed until the end. From Rin Enbin's words, Noah felt a strong sense of mission. That's right, it was a sense of mission. For Rin and Osaka, this Holy Grail war should be very special, right? After all, the Enbin family was one of the 3 magician families that founded the Holy Grail war. Their biggest wish was to obtain the Holy Grail and reach the origin. To be honest, Noah didn't think that Rin Enbin was the kind of normal magician who would do anything to reach the origin. However, Rin Enbin should have already realized that he had to embark on a bloody path in the future, right? Obtaining the Holy Grail was only Rin Enbin's duty as a child of the Enbin family. As for what he should do after obtaining the Holy Grail, Noah didn't see such an obvious goal from Rin Enbin's words and actions. Therefore, Rin Enbin really only participated in the Holy Grail war for victory. Noah felt that he had misunderstood Rin Enbin. Originally, he thought that Rin Enbin was just a magician who hadn't made his debut yet, just like Aoko. She had a sense of awareness but was immature, and would even drop the ball at crucial moments. Even her personality was affected by her emotions. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used a command spell, just because Archer was too arrogant. But now, it seemed that even if that was the case, Rin Enbin still had a resolute side that Noah couldn't deny. She really was a girl who was similar to that immature magician Aoko Aozaki in all aspects. Because of this, Noah really couldn't bear to see Rin Enbin embark on a path of killing for the sake of magic. Yes. Just like Aoko Aozaki. I have indeed received your message. Noah said calmly. As you wish, until the final battle arrives, let's maintain a cooperative relationship. That would be for the best. Rin Enbin smiled lightly and turned around to look at Izichin. After a long time, Rin Enbin, whose back was facing Noah, finally spoke. You really don't plan on doing anything to Sakura? Noah, who had just picked up his teacup, paused for a moment, then took a sip of black tea and replied. No. Is that so? Rin Enbin nodded. That's good. This time, there was less suspicion and more trust. Chapter 729. After coming up with a plan to deal with Berserker, Noah left Inaka's house. Under the dark moonlight, he walked out of Inaka's house. Rin Inaka was considerate enough to send Noah out of her house. It's already late at night. This is the time when the master and the servant are active. Standing in front of her house, Rindo Saka flicked her beautiful black hair and said to Noah, who just walked out of the house. You have to be careful. Don't meet other masters and servants. The most fundamental part of magic was concealment. This so-called magic was actually a power that had already been determined in the origin. That power was limited. The more people who used it, the less power each magician would get. Therefore, in order to prevent magic from completely disappearing, the Magic Association set the most basic rule of concealment. They were even willing to kill witnesses. This was the same for the Church of Holy Light. To the Church of Holy Light, magic, which could only be performed by God and their teachings, was simply heresy. Therefore, the relationship between the Magic Association and the Church of Holy Light was very bad. In the past, they were constantly at war, but now, they were only in a state of truce. They could start another war at any time. Therefore, the Church of Holy Light naturally didn't want to see magic being exposed in front of ordinary people. After all, if everyone knew that the so-called miracles of God could also be achieved by themselves, and that there was no need to pray to God in order to obtain them, then the most fundamental belief of the Holy Church would be shaken, and the teachings of the Holy Church would be questioned. Therefore, in terms of concealment, the Magic Association and the Church of Holy Light had the same point of view. Because of this, the Church of Holy Light would also consider concealment first. This Holy Grail war that was under the supervision of the Church of Holy Light was naturally the same. Since two of the biggest powers in the world had already decided on such a course of action, then no matter how arrogant they were, they had to consider concealment first. Naturally, when there weren't many people out at night, it was the time when the master and the servant were most active. I don't need you to remind me. Noah nodded in agreement. I've already fought a monster like Berserker today. I don't want to meet another difficult opponent. At least let me go today. To me, you're also a monster if you can fight a monster like that, Rindosaka said to Noah as she rolled her eyes. She seemed to have thought of something. Speaking of which, you haven't been to the church yet, right? Don't you plan to report to them first? At the very least, you're a supervisor. I really don't intend to do that, Noah said bluntly. Even though it's just my personal opinion, I really don't like priests. So, let's just forget about it. In another parallel world of this world, Noah had met a terrible priest like Wen Bing Yongli, who had an abnormal value system. And in the world of Demon High School, that disgusting priest, Freddy, made Noah's impression of priests drop to the lowest. How could Noah like the priest? In this regard, Rin Enbin actually agreed. What a coincidence, I also have the same idea. However, if you go there and report, you can at least get some information, such as the number of masters and servants that have appeared, Rin Enbin said. Since you don't plan to go to the church, then I'll tell you by the way. At present, in Fuyuki City, including you and me, there are already 5 confirmed masters. The servants that have been summoned are Lancer, Archer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker. Only Saber and Assassin haven't been summoned yet. No, it should be said that they might have been summoned, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. Rin Enbin reminded. So, you should be careful. Noah nodded thoughtfully and smiled at Rin Enbin. I understand, but you don't need to worry about me. At least, compared to me, you should be more worried about yourself. You're still as confident as ever. Be careful not to fail miserably. Not everyone will face you head-on like Berserker. Rin Enbin threw such a sentence. Still the same sentence, you should be careful. Lancer, Archer, Rider, Caster, and Berserker. On the way back to the apartment, Noah secretly muttered. I have already met Lancer, but his master didn't appear. Berserker's master is Alicia Field. So, I haven't met Caster yet, right? That being said, Noah was not afraid of Caster. No matter what, even if he didn't use his authority, Noah was also a God Slayer. The mystical power that didn't reach the realm of God was ineffective in front of his curse resistance. And Caster, as the name suggested, was a magician. As a famous heroic spirit in myths and legends, the magician who could sit on the caster's position must have a high level of magic attainment that could be imagined. However, after all, it was just a servant's avatar, not the real body. Even if there was magic that could cause damage to God's capital, for Noah, Castor's threat was much smaller than the other servants. As for the remaining saber and assassin, Noah needed to be wary of saber. As the one with the highest requirement for ability value among the 7 servants, it was also the strongest job class among the 7 servants under normal circumstances. The other party's close combat skills were at least on par with lancers, which was still a threat to Noah. On the contrary, assassin, for Noah, who had excellent sensing ability, may not be difficult to deal with. Well, Noah, who was thinking about all this, suddenly felt a strange feeling, and his footsteps subconsciously stopped. Raising his head, he looked forward. What was imprinted in Noah's eyes was the dark. There was no pedestrian at all, a figure slowly walking toward this side. That was a very conspicuous person. If one had to say why, it would be because that person had a head of very eye-catching golden hair. He was wearing black and white, like a motorcycle suit. His figure was slender, his hands were in his pockets, like a wanton teenager, exuding a sense of existence that could not be ignored. In that strong sense of existence, Noah felt a sense of oppression. That didn't mean that the wanton teenager in front of him was very threatening to Noah. Instead, as if it was a matter of course, that person was releasing their presence to the entire world that they existed in. Therefore, that sense of oppression was not directed at Noah, but seemed to be directed at the surrounding environment. That was definitely not an ordinary person. For a moment, Noah did not move anymore. Standing in the same place, he looked straight at the blond man walking toward him. The blond man did not seem to notice Noah's existence. His eyes were closed, and there was a trace of a domineering arc at the corner of his mouth. With leisurely steps, he walked past Noah. Between tonguing, just as the blond man passed by Noah, a light sentence drifted into Noah's ears. If you don't hurry to that woman's side, she will be in more and more pain. Leaving this sentence, the blond man gradually disappeared into the moonlit night with leisurely footsteps as if he did not exist in the first place. Noah did not turn his head, nor did he speak. He just stared at the dark road in front of him, deep in the darkness. After a long time, he suddenly smiled. It seems that there are still many unexpected factors in this Holy Grail war. Chapter 730. The next day, not long after dawn, Noah left the apartment. He didn't even have breakfast. He followed the path he had taken yesterday and arrived at Enosaka's house. Noah raised his hand and was about to knock on the door, but the door in front of him was opened. Then, Archer in a red and black night suit appeared in front of Noah and looked at Noah. "You just signed a partnership yesterday, and you can't wait to find my master today." "If you can't wait, that's fine. After all, I have something to ask Enosaka." Noah withdrew his hand and asked Archer. "Then, where is Enosaka?" "Still sleeping. That woman is not good at dealing with the morning. It's impossible for her to get up at this time." Archer replied expressionlessly. He opened the door completely and turned sideways. "In short, if you want to find Rin, then go find him yourself." After saying this, Archer's entire body disappeared under the cover of a blue mist that was similar to spiritual energy. He had entered the state of spiritual transformation. Seeing this, Noah's eyes twitched. This guy, just like Rin Enosaka said, he's really arrogant. With that said, Noah also walked into the entrance of Tasaka's house. After closing the door, he walked through the corridor in front of the door and headed for the stairs. Enosaka's house was the manager of Fuyuki City. As a magician family with some history, even if Rin Enosaka was the only one left in the house, there were naturally magicians in this house. Just like the old mansion with pearls, En Osaka's house was full of barriers and magic spells left by Rin En Osaka or the former residents of En Osaka's house. If one barged in without permission, there would be no return. Of course, for Noah, who had a strong resistance to curses, those enchantments and spells were as good as non-existent. He would vanish with a gentle touch. However, Noah didn't come here to cause trouble. He really had something to ask Rin En Osaka. Therefore, Noah went directly to the stairs on the second floor and walked toward Rin En Osaka's room. Yesterday, Noah had taken a look around to Sokka's house. As for the location of Rin Enbin's room, Rin Enbin had casually mentioned it yesterday. In order not to accidentally break into a girl's room, Noah also made a note of it. Who would have thought that it would come in handy in such a situation? After passing through the long corridor, Noah arrived in front of a room and knocked on the door. "Yu Osaka, are you there?" These words were met with an indescribable silence. Thinking of what Archer had just said, Noah knocked harder on the door and raised his voice a little. "Nagasaka, reply if you're here, or I'm going to barge in." However, after he finished speaking, there was still a moment of silence. Noah pursed his lips and helplessly reached out to open the door. "I'm coming in." Noah opened the door to Rin Enbin's room, exposing the entire room to him. It was a rather spacious room. The decorations were a bit old-fashioned, without the pink color that a girl's room should have. It looked somewhat lifeless, but the warm atmosphere was more or less there. Perhaps it was because the weather was still very cold. Although there was no heater in the room, the windows were tightly shut, and the curtains were drawn, making the entire room a bit dark. In such a situation, in the innermost part of the room, there was a bed that took up quite a lot of space. The blanket was actually a mess, twisted into a ball. From the twisted blanket, Noah noticed a fluctuating breath. Needless to say, the person that Noah was looking for must be like a snail hiding in its shell, nestled in a ball of quilt. At this moment, the corner of Noah's mouth twitched. Was she not good at coping with the morning? This was a sleeping difference that she couldn't tolerate at night, right? Of course, for a beautiful girl to have such a sleeping posture, perhaps, it was a cute point. Unfortunately, Noah didn't have the time to look at Rin Inaka's sleeping posture. He sighed and walked into the room. He walked to the edge of the bed and reached out his hand to shake the blanket that was twisted into a ball. "Enbin, wake up." Under Noah's call and shaking, the twisted blanket finally moved. Yes. Just like the word said, it only moved a little. In the next second, the blanket immediately fell into a dead silence, and no longer moved. Noah felt that his patience was wearing thin. He resisted the urge to lift the blanket, took a deep breath, stood up, and walked out of the room. After some time, Noah returned to Rin Enbin's room with a piece of ice in his hand. He narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. He slightly lifted a corner of the blanket, and then, without mercy, threw the ice in his hand in. Wah dash! The next moment, the blanket that was twisted into a ball suddenly bounced up. With a cry, Rin Enbin jumped out of the blanket in her pajamas. Her hair was untied, and it cascaded down to her waist like a waterfall. She jumped and screamed. So cold. So cold. Should it be said that Noah's method was unbelievably accurate? The ice that Noah threw into the blanket actually went under Rin Enbin's pajamas. Rin Enbin pulled it out and threw it on the ground, panting heavily. What's going on? Why are there ice cubes here? Realizing that Rin Enbin didn't notice his presence, Noah covered his face and sighed. Because I was the one who threw it in. Rin Enbin only just realized that there was another person in her room. She turned her head and looked at Noah, who was covering his face and sighing. She raised her eyebrows and pointed at him. Why are you here? I'm curious. Why didn't you notice that I came in? Noah retorted. Although we have a cooperative relationship, you're completely defenseless, which is basically telling me that now is the best time to get rid of you. That's why you should be thankful that I threw an ice cube at you instead of a magic bullet, Miss Tasaka. So annoying. So many things have happened in the past few days. At least let me have a good night's sleep. Rin Enbin's shoulders and head drooped as she spoke weakly. So, why did you wake me up so cordially? I just have something to ask you. Noah looked at Rin Enbin and paused for a moment before asking. Let me ask you. Sakura's surname is Jiantong, right? Is it that Jiantong? At first, Noah didn't think about Jiantong Sakura's surname. However, last night, when the mysterious blonde man mentioned it, Noah remembered Jiantong Sakura's surname. In Fuyuki City, there were 3 magic families that created the Holy Grail War ritual: Enbin, Jiantong, and Beirin. If Jiantong Sakura's surname was Jiantong, then wouldn't it mean that Jiantong Sakura was also related to the magic world, and could even be related to the Holy Grail War? After all, as the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War ritual, every time the Holy Grail War ritual, there would be people from these 3 families participating in the Holy Grail War. Now, Rin Enbin from Enbin and Beirin from Beirin had already appeared. What about the Tong family's representative? Thinking about this question and the mysterious blonde man's words last night, Noah felt that something was wrong. He came here at dawn today to try to get to the bottom of it. Are you suspecting that Sakura is also a master? At the mention of Jiantong Sakura, Rin Enbin seemed to wake up and shook his head. No, you should also be able to feel that there is no trace of magic on Sakura's body. She can't be called a magician at all. Jiantong Sakura is actually declining now. In this generation, even the magic circuit is almost exhausted. They are no different from ordinary people. Therefore, Jiantong Sakura should have no participants this time. That's true. Noah frowned. After a while, he looked at Rin Enbin. Are you going to school today? What's wrong? Nothing. Noah said such a sentence. If you plan to go, take me with you. Chapter 731. Suichuan Gakuin. It was a high school located in Fuyuki City. It wasn't a noble school, nor was it a civilian school. It was just a very ordinary school. In terms of scale, Suichuan Gakuin wasn't particularly luxurious. Not to mention Haolane Gakuin, which occupied an entire artificial island when Noah studied in the world of absolute dual blades, it wasn't very outstanding even compared to Haolane Gakuin in the world of Demon High School. However, in Noah's view, from an ordinary person's point of view, Suichuan Gakuin was the kind of school that couldn't be picked out. It was slightly better than the school in Sanayo City that Noah studied in the other parallel world. Therefore, there were many students studying in this Suichuan Gakuin. Rin Enosaka was a student of this school. Matsumoto Sakura, who called Rin Enosaka Sr., was also a student of this school. Under the leadership of Rin Enosaka, who finally cheered up, Noah walked on the road to Suichuan Gakuin and soon saw the corner of the school. Rin Enosaka kept muttering to Noah, who was getting closer and closer to Suichuan Gakuin, who was observing the school. There's no trace of magic on Sakura's body. Since we can't even feel the trace of magic, then even if there's magic in her body, it's probably very little. That level of magic isn't enough to maintain the appearance of a servant. Generally speaking, the Holy Grail shouldn't have chosen someone of that level to be its master. Gaia and Alea had also told Noah that the Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would choose to participate in the competition for its own people. The better the magician, the more likely they are to be chosen. And even if they are not particularly good magicians, if they have the factor of becoming the master, they will be chosen, such as having strong magic and so on. Of course, this is not absolute. The Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would sometimes choose some people who could be related to the Holy Grail War, in some aspects as a candidate for the master. For example, there is a deep relationship with a servant that outsiders can't see. From Rin Enbin's point of view, that kind of relationship shouldn't exist between Mitsuharu and Mitsuharu Sakura. However, Rin and Osaka couldn't be sure. After all, no matter what, the Tong family was one of the three families that created the Holy Grail War. They were also responsible for the creation of the command incantation, so it was possible that they had other methods to make him be chosen by the Holy Grail. Therefore, Rin and Osaka's words were not meant for Noah's ears, but for himself. Noah could empathize with Rin Enbin. At the very least, Noah himself did not wish for Tonging to become master and participate in this killing party. Moreover, becoming a master meant becoming an enemy, and Rin Toyama didn't want to see Toyama Sakura become his enemy. It was only natural that he would behave this way. However, the more they thought about it, the more uneasy Noah and Rin Enbin felt. Especially Noah. After knowing that Tonging was from the Tong family, Noah felt that he had overlooked something important. Noah knew that Tonging seemed to have a past that no one knew. He originally thought that it was just Tong Ying's personal problem. Now it seemed that the truth was more complicated than Noah thought. In addition, Rin Enbin's almost neurotic behavior made Noah more or less suspicious. For some reason, he felt that Rin and Osaka had special feelings for his junior sister, Tong Ying. Just because Noah mentioned it, Rin Enbin started to nag, even to the point of comforting himself. Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? Or, the relationship between Rin Enbin and Tong Ying wasn't as simple as what Noah heard on the surface. With their own thoughts, Noah and Rin Enbin finally arrived at the gate of Suichuan Hara Academy. Because of Noah, Rin Enbin woke up early today and came to school early. Therefore, there were not many people in front of the school gate now. There were only a few students who needed to participate in the morning club activities coming and going in the school sparsely. It was very deserted. According to Rin Enbin, Tong Ying also participated in the club activities. Therefore, during this period of time, Tong Ying should have already arrived at school. However, before entering the school gate, the sharp-eyed Noah first noticed a person, causing him to stop in his tracks. Only Rin Enbin seemed to be immersed in his own world. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. In the next second, Rin Enbin heard a very flirtatious voice. "Yo, Enbin, you're early today." Hearing this voice, Rin Enbin's footsteps also stopped, but he seemed to recognize the owner of this voice. After faintly clicking his tongue, he raised his head. In front of the gate of Suichuan Gakuin Academy, there was a guy with a head full of seaweed. He had a proud expression on his face as he walked in the direction of Rin Osaka. He even pretentiously spread his arms. Hey, I thought today's club activities would be as boring as usual. I didn't expect Enbin to come so early. Why don't you come with me to the club?" Hearing this, Rin Enbin hid a trace of disdain in his eyes, and on his face, there was an elegant smile that made people feel like they were far apart. "Hello, Shinji Tonging." The person who had come was the seaweed head who had thrown a tantrum on the streets for no reason and had cursed at Tonging. Shinji Tonging. Tong Ying's brother. Until today, Noah finally knew the name of this guy who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Because Noah noticed Shinji Tong's arrival in advance, and because Rin Enbin was immersed in his own world, he didn't notice that Noah had stopped. At this time, Noah was still a bit away from Rin Enbin. Shinji Tong, who only had eyes for Rin Enbin, didn't notice that Noah, who made him lose face last time, wasn't far away. He also didn't notice Rin Enbin's polite smile as if he was facing a stranger. He kept walking back and forth in front of Rin Enbin. "Well, don't be so polite, just call me by my name." "How about I call you by your name?" Seeing Shinji Tong taking advantage of the situation, Rin Enbin was both amused and angry. "No need, Shinji Tong, we're not familiar enough to call each other by name. It's better to be polite here." What he meant was that Tong Shinji's actions had already reached the point of being rude and unsightly. However, Shinji Tong didn't realize the meaning of Rin Enbin's words at all, and he was still proud. Don't say that, Enbin, since you came so much earlier than usual, there must be something you can do at this time, right? Shinji Tong smiled as if he had seen through everything. He even reached out his hand and was about to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder. For example, to have a good relationship with a boy who needs to participate in club activities and will come to school early. When these words came out, even Rin Enbin, who felt that she needed to maintain the elegance and politeness of a daughter in front of a rotten person, closed her eyes, and the smile on her face slowly disappeared. And this behavior, in Shinji Tong's eyes, meant that Rin Enbin had acquiesced to his words and actions, which made him happy and proud, and he immediately planned to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder. Unfortunately, just when Shinji Tong was about to put his arm around Rin Enbin's shoulder, Rin Enbin opened his eyes, and his face and eyes became emotionless, as if he had given up on something. He turned around and directly avoided Shinji Tong's hand. I'm really convinced, there's someone who doesn't understand what I mean, there should be a degree of self-consciousness, idiot. Rin Enbin's avoidance and suddenly quite ruthless words made Shinji Tong stunned, and he was even at a loss. What? You still don't understand. Rin Enbin once again showed an elegant smile, but his words became nasty. I have no interest in you, do you understand? Chapter 732. I'm not interested in you at all. Do you understand? Rin Enosaka's merciless words made Shinji Tomitsuki stunned. When he reacted, his face turned red and he forced a smile. You? What are you talking about? Even if you deliberately hide it now, it's useless. If you obediently admit it, I can still give you some love. Tomitsuki classmate, it's fine if you don't understand words that are too profound, but please don't not understand what others say directly. You're not an ape. Rin Enosaka tilted her head. That action was quite cute, but the mercilessness in her words had already reached a limit. I don't know why you would have such an overconscious thought to think that I would have feelings for you, but I can clearly tell you that you misunderstood. No matter how I think about it, there's nothing about you that I would like. Enosaka. You. Shinji Tomitsuki's face turned green and white. It seemed that Rin Enosaka's words poked at his pride and face. Noah, who was not far away, originally thought that Shinji Tomitsuki was just teasing Rin Enosaka, but when he saw Shinji Tomitsuki's reaction, he was stunned. Shinji Tomitsuki, did he really think that Rin Enosaka came to school early in the morning for him? In this world, there was actually someone who was so self-conscious that he thought that a girl came to school early in the morning for him. Wasn't this a bit too funny? Noah had to admit that Shinji Tomitsuki's appearance was indeed a bit handsome. However, with that personality and character, to be honest, a real good woman would not like him. Whether or not Rin Enosaka was a good woman, Noah temporarily reserved his opinion on this point. But in terms of appearance and family background, Rin Enosaka was indeed impeccable. Then, would such a girl like her be interested in such a self-conscious and extremely self-righteous man? The answer, of course, was no. If you still don't understand, then it seems that I have to use my actions to prove it. Rin Enosaka seemed to be disgusted by Shinji Tomitsuki's overconscious behavior. Seeing Shinji Tomitsuki's face turn green and white, she did not intend to stop. She looked around and when she saw Noah standing not far away, she waved at Noah. Noah suddenly froze. What was she planning to do? And when Rin Enosaka waved her hand, Shinji Tomitsuki also noticed Noah. When he recognized Noah, his eyes widened and even his voice became sharp. It's you. Seeing this, Noah, who knew that he couldn't stay out of this, pursed his lips and walked forward. What's wrong? Rin Enbin asked Noah, who had walked up to him. Do you know him? No, rather than saying that I know him, it's better to say that I just found out his name. Noah glanced at Shinji Tamatsuki and said lightly. Not long ago, this guy was making trouble on the street. He lost his temper in front of Sakura for no reason. I taught him a lesson. It's really you. Thinking of the humiliation, Shinji Tamatsuki's face twisted. You dare to appear in front of me. Hearing this, Noah really wanted to laugh. Undoubtedly, he ran away because he was scared. Now, what did Shinji Tamatsuki rely on to say this in front of Noah? Sure enough, you're a rotten person. Rin Enosaka's eyes flashed with disgust, but in the next moment, she smiled. At that moment, Rin Enosaka actually did something in front of Shinji Mitsuki, which made Noah somewhat stunned. Rin Enosaka suddenly reached out her hand and hugged Noah's arm. She put her head on Noah's shoulder. You. Shinji Tamatsuki looked like he saw something unbelievable. He took 2 steps back and pointed at Rin Enosaka with a trembling finger. Enosaka. What are you doing? Shinji Tamatsuki's question was like being betrayed by his lover. But Rin Enosaka had nothing to do with Shinji Tamatsuki. In other words, Shinji Tamatsuki took Rin Enosaka as his own. That's what happened. I say, Tamatsuki, let me explain it to you one by one, okay? Rin Enosaka hugged Noah tightly and said to Shinji Tamatsuki with a sweet smile on her face. In terms of appearance, you're not as outstanding as Noah. In terms of temperament, you can't even compare to a single strand of Noah's hair. In terms of ability, personality, and character, you're so weak that even I feel pity for you. With such a person who's many times better than you by my side, would you still think that I'm interested in you? Shinji Tamatsuki's face darkened. By the way, yesterday, Noah took me to a ball. It was an upper-class ball hosted by a famous jeweler. There, not only did I wear a dress that you can't afford in your lifetime, but I also met a lot of people that you can't reach in your lifetime. And those people are all Noah's acquaintances. Rin Enosaka didn't leave any face for Shinji Tamatsuki. She hugged Noah's arm and looked at Shinji Tamatsuki. So, know your place, self-righteous guy. Don't bother me again. I'm afraid my Noah will be angry with me. Leaving these words, Rin Enosaka hugged Noah's arm and walked intimately into the school under Noah's speechless and helpless expression. Shinji Tamatsuki just stood there. His expression became extremely ferocious because of the anger in his heart and another emotion. Noah didn't know that Rin Enosaka, who was very unreliable in front of him and would even drop the chain at the crucial moment, was actually the eldest daughter of Suichuin Academy. Because House Enosaka was an ancient magic family. For generations, they held the idea that words and deeds should be elegant in accordance with their status. Therefore, Rin Enosaka could be said to be a well-behaved eldest daughter of a noble family. Appearance was outstanding. Conduct was dignified. Behavior was elegant. Grades were excellent. She was the perfect school flower that everyone recognized. This was Rin Enosaka's identity in Suichuin Academy. Because of this, in the school, many men naturally secretly yearned for Rin Enosaka. Shinji Tamatsuki was one of them. Now, the person he fancied announced in front of him that she belonged to another man. How could Shinji Tamatsuki endure this? In addition, this person was the one who made Shinji Tamatsuki lose face in front of everyone. After that, he was criticized and made fun of by many people in the school. How could Shinji Tamatsuki endure the tumbling emotions in his heart? In addition to endless anger, Shinji Tamatsuki's heart was also filled with monstrous jealousy. Bastard! Who would recognize a man who crawled out of nowhere? Shinji Tamatsuki fiercely turned around and looked at Rin Enosaka, who was hugging Noah's arm intimately. Shinji Tamatsuki looked at the man and woman with eyes full of resentment. Bastard! 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 After a series of ugly venting, Shinji Tamatsuki thought of something and suddenly laughed. His laugh was unusually cruel. In that case, don't blame me, Enosaka. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not looking at a man. On the other side, Noah, who was tightly hugged by Rin Enosaka, said in a bored tone. You actually used me as a shield. Rather than a shield, it's better to say that I just want to make that guy understand his own worth. Rin Enosaka said without care. To be honest, that guy has been like this for a long time. Today, I'm in a bad mood, and I'm too lazy to continue playing the good student game with him. Even if you're not here, I'll let him know how much he's worth. While saying this, Rin Enosaka didn't let go of Noah's hand. Instead, he looked at Noah with a devilish smile. What? Are you shy? Noah naturally wouldn't blush because of Rin Enosaka's intimate action. He was no longer the ignorant person he used to be. That guy is also from the Mitsuki family, right? Yes. Rin Enosaka answered without thinking. But, as a member of the Mitsuki family, the magic circuit in his body has basically dried up. He can no longer be a magician. Hearing this, Noah began to think. Chapter 733. It was the source of magic that all magicians were born with. This was the magic circuit. It was the simulated nerves in the magician's body, and it was also the individual qualification of a magician. It could transform the magician's life force into magic, and it was closely connected to the magic base plate, so that the magician could perform man-made miracles, that is, magic. In other words, the magic circuit was the most fundamental proof of a magician. Only with the magic circuit could one have magic, perform magic, and become a magician. On the other hand, the magic circuit was something that had been decided since birth. Whether it was its existence, quantity, or quality, it would not be increased by external factors. Because it was a very rare thing to begin with. Therefore, in order to be able to pass down the magic of their family and let their descendants inherit their research, in an attempt to one day reach the origin, usually, several generations of bloodline accumulation would be carried out, so that the descendants born would have a body that was more suitable for magic. If the existence of magicians was combined with each other, then the probability of the descendants having the magic circuit was very high, and some excellent ones could even have a good magic circuit, laying a huge foundation for themselves to become excellent magicians. Therefore, in the magic world, in order to be able to give birth to excellent descendants with the magic circuit, families that went overboard were simply doing breed improvement, just to increase the magic circuit of the children born. Of course, there were also some exceptions who mutated the magic circuit from ordinary people's families, and that was a special case among special cases. Naturally, since there were examples of magician families being able to produce more outstanding offspring than the previous generation, and there were also examples of magicians mutating from ordinary families, then there were gradually declining magic families, and their aptitude as magicians became lower and lower, until finally, there were no magician families at all. The Intertong family was such an existence. In today's Tong family, Shinji's magic circuit is basically exhausted, and he can't even open it, so he can't be called a magician at all. Rin Enbin's tone became a little complicated. As for Xiaoying, that child has pretty good talent as a magician, but for some reason, she doesn't seem to have inherited the magic of the Tong family. If she can't even feel magic, it's useless no matter how good her talent is. In other words, if there is a master in the Mesotome family, it would either be Sakura or Shinji Mesotome. Noah asked. Which one do you think is more likely? I don't think either of them is possible, Rin Enosaka replied. Sakura basically doesn't have any magic power, and Shensi has even exhausted his magic circuit. If these two people can be chosen by the Holy Grail, then I have overestimated the threshold of the Holy Grail War. That being said, Rin Enosaka's words were convincing, but there were also some parts that he didn't seem to want to admit. No matter what, my goal is to obtain victory in this holy grail war. Even though his expression was complicated, Rin Enbin's eyes were filled with determination. Even if Sakura really becomes master, I will beat her without mercy. Rin Enosaka's words were quite resolute. It was just like how Ayako had declared in front of Noah that she would definitely take care of her sister. This also made Noah realize the relationship between Rin Enosaka and Mesotome Sakura was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Just as Noah and Rin Enosaka fell into silence, a voice full of surprise and uncertainty came from behind Noah and Rin Enosaka. Noah-san. Tenosaka-senpai. Hearing this voice, both Noah and Rin Enosaka were shocked. They turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Noah and Rin Enosaka saw the person they had been talking about since early in the morning. At this time, Mesotome Sakura was standing in front of the door of a Japanese-styled building. She maintained the posture of opening the door and looked at Noah and Rin Enosaka with surprise and astonishment. The reason was naturally because Rin Enosaka was tightly hugging Noah's arm and snuggling into Noah's embrace. You guys, looking at Mesotome Sakura's stuttering appearance, Noah and Rin Enosaka followed her gaze and looked at themselves. Then, they finally realized the situation they were in. At this moment, Noah aside, Rin Enosaka seemed to have been electrocuted. She suddenly let go of Noah's arm and her face was slightly flushed. She quickly said to Mesotome Sakura, "No, it's not what you think. Sakura. It's not what you think. Then what is it?" From an outsider's point of view, Rin Enosaka's panic and explanation looked like she was trying to hide something. Mesotome Sakura's expression became more and more awkward. However, this gentle girl still spoke out to comfort her. "Tenosaka-senpai, please calm down first. I didn't misunderstand anything, please don't worry." After saying that, Mesotome Sakura stuttered again. "It's just that Tenosaka-senpai, who used to hate Noah-san, why did you suddenly change your attitude? If possible, can you tell me?" After Mesotome Sakura said that, Noah and Rin Enosaka finally realized. Rin Enosaka, who used to dislike Noah, and Noah, who didn't like Rin Enosaka, didn't know when it started, but they were able to stand side by side like today. They didn't regard each other as outsiders at all, and they even touched each other. Rin Enosaka seemed like she wanted to explain something, but was interrupted by Noah's sigh. In this situation, the more you explain, the more chaotic it will be. You better shut up. Rin Enosaka was immediately speechless. After a while, Rin Enosaka coughed and pretended to look at Mesotome Sakura seriously. "Sakura, Noah is looking for you today." "Huh?" Mesotome Sakura was stunned. "Looking for me?" "That's right. I'm just leading the way." Rin Enosaka brushed her hair, turned around, and waved her hand as if her mission was completed. "Then, Sakura, I'll leave this guy to you, I'll go to the classroom first." After saying that, Rin Enosaka left without permission. Mesotome Sakura reached out her hand to Rin Enosaka's direction, but that hand could only hang in the air as if it was frozen there. Watching Rin Enosaka leave, Mesotome Sakura looked at Noah with a confused expression. "Noah-san, looking at the confused look on Tanjing's face, Noah smiled bitterly. But soon, he smiled again. "I'm just curious about what you usually do in this school, Xiaoying." Is that so?" Mesotome Sakura finally reacted. Her expression seemed to be suddenly enlightened, and she couldn't help but smile. "I'm very happy that Noah-san came." Hearing that, Noah fixed his gaze on Mesotome Sakura's smiling face and smiled as well. "I'm also very happy to see Sakura smile." That was the truth. From the first time they met until now, this young girl who had always acted inferior and passive in front of Noah was finally willing to openly smile. "Ah." Mesotome Sakura quickly lowered her head and shyly covered her face, then said to Noah rather clumsily. Then, would Mr. Noah like to come in and take a look at the archery department? Is that okay? Noah hesitated. I won't disturb you, right? No, there aren't many people here at this time of the year. Mesotome Sakura seemed to be a little hesitant, and even her tone had become a little unconfident. So, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Seeing that Mesotome Sakura was doubting his words, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Then take a look around. If there's anything inconvenient, remember to tell me. Mesotome Sakura nodded repeatedly, then opened the door a little embarrassedly and welcomed Noah into the archery department. Before entering the archery department, Noah discreetly sized up Mesotome Sakura's body, especially the back of her hand. If Mesotome Sakura was the master, then there should be a command incantation somewhere on her body. As long as the command incantation was found, it would prove that Mesotome Sakura was the master. Unfortunately, Mesotome Sakura was dressed in archery attire today, and she was also wearing protective gear and gloves on her hands. Noah couldn't see the back of her hand at all. Left with no choice, Noah could only choose to observe the situation first. In fact, whether or not Mesotome Sakura was the master wasn't something that Noah really cared about. What Noah really cared about was what the handsome blonde man said that night. Chapter 734. Under Tanjing's lead, Noah entered the archery department of Sui Kun Yuan Academy and arrived at an extremely spacious venue. It was a spacious venue with a wooden floor. Shelves were placed around it, and the space in the middle was completely empty. In front of them was an open-air grassland with walls on both sides. The walls continued until they were more than 10 meters away from the end point. This was naturally the place to practice archery. At the front of the spacious wooden floor near the open-air grassland was a place for the members of the archery department to aim. In front of the walls at the end of the open-air grassland, there were targets. Just as Tanjing had said, perhaps it was because it was too early, but there was no one in the archery department. The commander left after I arrived. Tanjing, who welcomed Noah in, said to Noah in her usual soft voice. So, we are the only ones here now. Perhaps because she felt that her words were full of ambiguity, Tanjing blushed and quickly changed the topic. Mr. Noah, have you learned archery before? Just call me Noah. I'm not used to calling me Mr. Noah all the time. Noah shook his head and looked at the targets in front of him. I haven't learned archery before, but I've dabbled in shooting before. Shooting. Tanjing didn't expect Noah to suddenly say such a word, so she couldn't react in time. Do you mean the kind of gun? What? You don't believe me? Noah said to Tanjing with a half-smile. Don't look at me like that, I'm quite accurate with my shooting. To be precise, with the help of his sensory ability, Noah couldn't shoot accurately even if he wanted to. It was like turning on a radar to scan the surroundings. For shooting, it was too obvious that he could use his sensory ability to assist him. Noah didn't even need to aim deliberately. He just needed to follow the feedback from his sensory ability, set up his gun in front of the target, and pull the trigger. That was all he needed to do. Therefore, Noah's shooting could not be said to be accurate at all. It should be said to be cheating. Without the assistance of his sensory abilities, Noah's shooting would probably not be as good as those who had specially trained for this. Then, do you want to give it a try? Jian Tanjing suggested. If you have a foundation in shooting, then you should be able to use a good bow. As she spoke, Tanjing did not even give Noah time to respond. She went to the side of the bow rack, took down a wooden peach bow, and then pulled out a few arrows from the side. She cutely held them in front of her and came to Noah with a shy smile on her face. If you are interested, I can teach you how to draw a bow. In the eyes of the layman, the so-called bow and arrow was as simple as setting up the bow, knocking an arrow, aiming, and shooting. However, real archery, as long as the posture is a little wrong, it will affect the accuracy of shooting. The strength of the bow is also particular. It is not just blindly pulling the string to the full and shooting it out. The strength is too big and too small, which will also affect the final accuracy. Therefore, drawing a bow and arrow is a knowledge, even if it is not as good as sniper rifles, which need to confirm various atmospheres and wind directions. There are many things to pay attention to. Noah, who understood this, was more or less interested. If it won't cause you trouble, it doesn't matter if you try it a little. No, how could it? Jian Tanjing shook her head and immediately seemed to be happy to give the bow and arrow in her hand to Noah. Please pay attention to your safety. Jian Tanjing seems to like archery very much. She is sincerely happy to be able to teach others how to use a bow. Noah naturally will not pour cold water on Jian Tanjing. Under the gentle whisper of Jian Tanjing, after learning the basic posture and arrow skills, he turned his head and once again looked at the target in front of the wall at the end of the open-air grassland. Frankly speaking, that distance is only moderate for ordinary people. However, for Noah, who has been strengthened by the protozoan virus, such as vision, night vision, and so on, that can only be regarded as a very close distance. At this distance, even without the assistance of the sensory ability, Noah is confident that he can hit the bull's eye. So, Noah simply added a little difficulty. Of course, it is only a little difficulty for Noah himself. In the midst of Tanjing's somewhat confused expression, Noah took out another 4 arrows from the quiver next to him, and together with the arrows that had been placed on the bow from the beginning, all 5 arrows were placed on the bow, and the tail end was directly pieced together. Pinching it with his fingers, he slowly pulled it together with the bowstring. Jian Tanjing seemed to realize what Noah was going to do and made a small exclamation. However, this small exclamation was also blocked out of Noah's ears. He set the bow, aimed at the front, and closed his eyes at an angle that even Jian Tanjing could not see. His perception force was like mental energy, spreading out in all directions like a net. It did not take long for Noah's sensory ability to feed back the position of the targets in the most direct way to Noah's mind. Moreover, it was not just one target, but 5 targets. Following the feedback of the information from his sensory ability, Noah calmly adjusted the position of the 5 arrows on the bow, and the adjustment was completed in a short moment. In the next moment, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and the hand that was tightly holding the end of the arrows and the bowstring suddenly loosened. Whoosh 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 whoosh. With the rebounding bowstring as the propulsion force, the 5 arrows each cut through the air, and shot forward amidst the faint sharp sound of breaking through the air. Thump 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 thump. In an instant, the sound of the arrows hitting the targets rang out, echoing in the empty archery department apart from Noah and Jian Tanjing. Looking at the scene in front of her, Jian Tanjing seemed to be doubting her own eyes. She blinked cutely, and then couldn't help but open her mouth. If it wasn't for the girl's reservedness that made Jian Tanjing cover her mouth with her hand when she opened it, Jian Tanjing would have exclaimed out loud by now. It couldn't be helped. As a member of the archery department, the scene in front of her was a little too shocking. With Noah, who had released the bowstring, maintained the arrow, and raised his hand behind him, the 5 closest targets in front of him, which should have been empty, were all pierced with arrows. 5 arrows hit 5 targets. Moreover, all of them hit the bullseye. If the arrows were shot in 5 separate shots, and all 5 shots hit the bullseye, then Jian Tanjing wouldn't be so surprised. However, if the 5 arrows were shot by the same person with the same bow at the same time, then it was a different story. Jian Tanjing could only find one word to describe the scene in front of her. So amazing. Hearing Jian Tanjing's voice, Noah smiled slightly. I told you, I'm still a little confident in shooting, right? Although he had used a method that was close to cheating. Amazing. It's really amazing. Only then did Jian Tangjing react. She moved closer to Noah and said with surprise and excitement, "This is the first time I've seen shooting like this. It's really amazing." Seeing Jian Tangjing's unprecedented enthusiasm, Noah was subconsciously forced to take a step back by this gentle girl's aura. "No. It's just a little stubborn of a layman." Hearing that, Jian Tangjing shook her head vigorously. "The shooting just now was perfect. Your posture was also very standard. Most importantly, your hand didn't even tremble when you used the bow for the first time. When you released the bowstring, you were very steady when you released the arrow. Also, your accuracy and technique are things that even our chief commander can't do." Rather than saying that even the chief commander of the archery department couldn't do it, it would be better to say that almost no ordinary person could do it. Jian Tangjing did have a special fondness for archery. She seemed to be very touched by Noah's cheat-like shooting, which made Noah a little regretful that he overdid it. At this moment, Noah suddenly felt a sharp gaze piercing his back, causing him to narrow his eyes and turn his head around. What he saw was the empty archery department's main entrance. However, Noah didn't think that his intuition was wrong. Someone was watching him. Chapter 735. In the end, Noah stayed in Suicunyuan Academy for an entire day. To be more precise, he stayed in the archery department for an entire day. As Jian Tangjing still had to attend classes, she went to the classroom after the club's morning practice. Since outsiders were not allowed to walk around the campus, Noah originally planned to wait outside the school gate. However, Jian Tangjing struggled and hesitated for a long time before she mustered her courage and did something that violated the school rules. She hid Noah in the archery department. Perhaps it was luck, but the archery department's chief general seemed to have brought the members to replenish the club's supplies, such as bowstrings, arrows, and the like. Therefore, no one else came to the archery department today except for Jian Tangjing, who was guarding the door. Therefore, Noah was able to stay in the archery department for an entire day. At least, that was what it looked like on the surface. After Jian Tangjing went to the classroom, Noah slipped out of the archery department and secretly strolled around Suicunyuan Academy. In the morning, Noah did sense that someone was secretly observing him. Since the owner of that gaze was able to disappear as soon as Noah noticed it, it proved that the other party was definitely not to be trifled with. Noah, who felt more and more concerned, naturally couldn't stay in the archery department obediently and wait for Jian Tangjing to finish school. Unfortunately, after that, Noah didn't discover anything strange in Suicunyuan Academy. During lunch break, Noah knew that Jian Tangjing would come to the archery department to look for him, so he snuck back into the archery department and spent the rest of the time with her. Apart from that, Noah was strolling around Suicunyuan Academy in the dark, but he didn't discover anything. Of course, the more he didn't find anything, the more Noah was concerned. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have worked so hard to hide in the dark corner of Suicunyuan Academy and hide here and there in order to not be discovered by ordinary students. Just like that, by the time Noah returned to the archery department empty-handed, the sky was gradually turning dark and Suicunyuan Academy was about to be dismissed. Due to Noah's presence in the archery department, Jian Tangjing rushed into the archery department as soon as class ended. When she realized that Noah was still there, she bowed apologetically. "I'm sorry for making you hide here for so long. It's alright, I'm not someone who can't stay idle." Noah spoke nonsense with a straight face, as if he had been obediently staying there the whole time. He then changed the topic. "It's getting late and I've seen enough of the tour. I should go back." "Yes." Jian Tangjing was a little disappointed, but also a little relieved and said embarrassedly. "Actually, the members of the archery department will continue to participate in the club activities in a while. Tangjing, Jian Tangjing, Jian Tangjing, Tangjing, Jian Tangjing. Then, it's better for all unrelated people to leave here." Just as Noah was about to leave the archery department, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of something strange that stunned him. Jian Tanjing noticed that Noah was suddenly staring at her without moving, which made her a little shy. "What? What's wrong?" Hearing this, Noah frowned and reached out his hand. As Jian Tanjing blushed slightly, he stroked Jian Tanjing's head. Then, Noah picked out a tuft of hair from Jian Tanjing's beautiful black hair. Noah was not to be blamed for acting this way. It was because the tuft of hair that Noah picked out from Jian Tanjing's beautiful black hair had turned purple. Yes. It wasn't originally purple, but it had turned purple. Noah was quite confident in his memory. Therefore, Noah could say with certainty that Jian Tanjing's hair was originally the most beautiful kind of black. There wasn't a trace of impurities in it like it was now. That wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Noah realized that there were traces of magic power in this tuft of hair. It was obvious that it was due to the influence of some unknown magic that caused the color of her hair to become like this. Moreover, he wasn't sure if it was just Noah's imagination. He felt that the traces of magic power couldn't be more familiar. It was the aura of Noah's magic power. Jian Tanjing was still a little confused at first, but when Noah picked out the tuft of purple hair, she immediately took a step back in a hurry, smoothed her hair, and hid the tuft of purple hair in her black hair. Her face no longer had the gentleness when she faced Noah all day, but became the same as when they first met. Her pretty face was full of sadness and depression, and her eyes were evasive. The atmosphere suddenly became stiff. Noah and Jian Tanjing fell into silence at the same time and stopped talking. Noah had been looking at Jian Tanjing all the time, as if he intended to see through Jian Tanjing's heart. His dark eyes were deeper than ever. Jian Tanjing, however, seemed to be afraid of Noah's gaze, or it should be said that she was afraid of being seen through by Noah. She kept her head down, avoiding Noah's gaze, and didn't dare to let her eyes meet with Noah's. After a long time, Noah suddenly smiled as if nothing had happened. "I didn't expect Xiaoying to know how to dye your hair. I always thought that you were an obedient girl." No. Xiaoying stuttered. She looked like she wanted to explain, but couldn't. Noah couldn't help but smile. "Well, I do hope that you can have more fun. It's not good to be an obedient girl all the time." Noah shrugged and changed the topic. "Then, your club members should be here by now. I'd better leave quickly." "Yes." Realizing that Noah didn't intend to probe further, nor did he make things difficult for her, and instead gave her a way out, Jian Tanjing felt grateful and guilty. She could only keep her head down. I'll send you off, no need." Noah patted Jian Tanjing's head and said meaningfully. "Instead of worrying about me, I'm actually more worried about you." With that, Noah turned around, waved his hand, and walked out of the archery department without looking back. "Then, see you next time." Jian Tanjing finally raised her head and looked at Noah's back that was gradually disappearing under the setting sun. Her eyes kept fluctuating, and she couldn't regain her senses for a long time. After leaving the archery department, the expression on Noah's face completely disappeared. Noah raised his head and looked at the dazzling sunset on the horizon. Then, he abruptly spoke. He suddenly asked, "Ryder, are you there?" "Yes." Ryder didn't deactivate her spiritual form, nor did she use the contract to talk to Noah directly in his heart. Instead, she spoke to Noah from behind, telling him that she was always behind him. Noah didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. "Ryder, from now on, you will secretly follow Jian Tanjing. Once you notice anything unusual, tell me immediately. Also, if she encounters any danger, remember to protect her." This was the first time Noah had used a commanding tone to give instructions to his servant. Perhaps she could sense that Noah was serious about this matter from his tone, but Ryder didn't make any objections. Just like before, she obediently chose to obey. I understand. Under normal circumstances, as long as it was a servant, she would more or less raise some objections. After all, instead of protecting an ordinary person, the safety of her master, who she relied on, should be more important. However, Ryder didn't raise any objections from the beginning to the end. Just like before, Ryder had an attitude of absolute obedience to her master's orders. She didn't even have the slightest intention of refuting. Of course, this was also because Ryder already knew that Noah's combat strength wasn't inferior to that of a servant. Otherwise, even if she didn't raise any objections, she would still raise some questions. If there's anything, Master can summon me to your side with the command incantation. With that, Ryder's aura gradually faded away from Noah. Presumably, Ryder had gone to Jian Tongjing's side, right? Silently feeling Ryder's aura gradually leaving him, Noah still raised his head to look at the setting sun in the sky and sighed. She really can't stop worrying. Chapter 736. Originally, Noah planned to wait for Rin to come out before leaving Suichu and Gakuin together. After all, it was Rin Enbin who brought Noah to this school. If he left by himself, he would probably be nagged to death by Rin Enbin. However, Noah really didn't know if he should mention this to Rin Enbin, considering the strange things that had happened to Mamoru Sakura. If he didn't mention it, the cooperation between the two seemed to be a bit bad. Mentioning Rin and Osaka's complicated feelings for Machan Tanakura would only cause the girl who was usually calm and collected, but who would act impulsively at critical moments, to be driven into a dead end, right? Under such circumstances, Noah simply left. When students began to leave Suichu and Gakuin, he slipped out of the school gate one step ahead. While thinking about his own things, he moved in the direction of his apartment. The sky gradually darkened. However, the more Noah walked, the farther away from his apartment, as if he deliberately planned to stay away from his apartment. He strolled on the streets of Fuyuki City. It wasn't until the sky was completely dark that Noah came to a park and stopped. It's time to come out, right? In the empty park, Noah sighed loudly. Such a clumsy tracking technique, if he doesn't come out, it will be too embarrassing. After Noah left Suichu and Gakuin, there was a person who has been following Noah from the school gate until now. Noah said that the other party's tracking technique was clumsy. It wasn't a deliberate provocation, but a fact. There was no need for the assistance of perception ability at all, and there was no need to detect the other party's aura. After Noah left Suichu and Gakuin, the other party's footsteps have been echoing in Noah's ears. It seemed that the other party had deliberately suppressed his footsteps, but it was quite clumsy, there was no trace of skill at all. It was like a clown. If it weren't for the aura he sensed from the other party, Noah wouldn't have played with that clumsy clown until now. Turning around, Noah looked at the entrance of the park. Behind a street lamp outside, a figure was clearly visible, and he didn't even hide completely. Now, without Noah's explanation, everyone knew how clumsy the other party's tracking technique was. TCH, in an obvious sound of speechlessness, the figure hidden behind the street lamp slowly walked out, with an angry expression, entered Noah's field of vision. Seeing the full appearance of the person, Noah didn't seem to be surprised at all, and he curled his mouth and smiled. Is it really you? The clumsy tracker was Shinji. Noah realized that the guy in front of him was constantly lowering other people's evaluation of him. Clown's words and deeds. Clown's personality. Clown's posture. Clown's skills. It was really the first time Noah had met such a person that he couldn't overestimate. It wasn't that Noah really intended to look at Shinji. But this person seemed to deliberately not let others see his side that was worth mentioning. It was more like he deliberately wanted to be looked down by others. Every performance made people's impression of him lower. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this person had no self-awareness at all. This was the real performance of a clown. Very good. Shinji said such a sentence with a fake smile. I thought you wouldn't find me if you didn't have a servant by your side. See? This person had no self-awareness at all. Not only was his performance clumsy, but he also wanted to drag others to the same level as him. Shinji was such a person, wasn't he? In the face of such a person, Noah found that he couldn't even have a trace of disgust. Because the person opposite him would only bring others helplessness and helplessness. Did you just mention the servant? Noah didn't have the leisure to dawdle with such a guy. He narrowed his eyes. Knowing the existence of the servant means that you know about the Holy Grail War. So, should I just treat you as if you simply heard it from your own family? Or should I treat you as a related person? Do you still need to say that? Shinji snickered. I'm the heir of the family. As the heir of one of the 3 families in the Holy Grail War, how can I not be a master? Oh. Noah said lightly. But isn't the magic circuit of your generation exhausted? Did Enosaka also say that you can't be a magician? Hearing this, Shinji seemed to be kicked by Noah's words. His mouth twitched, and the fake smile on his face became more and more ugly. As long as you have the qualifications to be a magician, it is possible to be chosen by the Holy Grail and become a master. Don't tell me you don't even know this. Of course, Noah didn't even know this. And it was precisely because of this that Noah felt that it was necessary to come to Suichu and Gakuen to see Shinji. Rin and Osaka also kept saying that it was impossible, but he couldn't completely deny it. It's just that the better the magician, the more likely it was to be chosen by the Holy Grail. Noah felt that as one of the 3 families, the family should have a master. Before, he had been suspicious of Shinji. After discovering the abnormality of Shinji's hair color, Noah felt that there was something more to Shinji. As a result, the master of the family was actually Shinji. Well, no matter what, I am the true heir of the family. Shinji seemed to be deliberately emphasizing, letting out a proud smile at Noah. And you, as a master, actually let your servant leave. If I don't come to you now, when would be a good time to come to you? While saying this, Shinji took out a thick book from his arms. Seeing that book, Noah's eyes flashed. The reason for that was because there was a very unusual demonic power in that book. This is a rare opportunity, I will specially introduce you to my servant. Shinji held the book in one hand and said proudly. Come out. Saber. The voice, just as he finished. Clang, the sound of a heavy metal piece hitting the ground faintly sounded. That was the sound of steel-cast boots hitting the ground. Then, a figure appeared from the dark shadow behind Shinji, entering Noah's vision. Title, Sabermaster. Real name. Attribute, ordered good ability value, strength, A durability, B agility, A magic power, A luck, B noble phantasm, A++ title skill, magic power, A with the highest level of magic power that can nullify the magic circle and great magic. Even the most powerful magician in the current era can't directly use magic to hurt Saber herself. Because the command spell is the crystallization of magic, in front of the highest level of magic power, if the master only used a command spell, Saber could even resist the command, but because she has the dragon attribute, when facing the magic of killing the dragon, her magic power may not be fully used. Riding, Ace a soldier who used to fight on horseback, after becoming a servant, she can have the ability to ride. She can skillfully control a variety of mounts, including ancient warhorses, chariots, and modern land transportation, etc. But if she can't control magical beasts and phantom beasts, if she is given a suitable mount, the development of the battle will be different. Preservation skills, intuition, in a moment of battle, the ability to determine the most suitable action for oneself. Level A, has entered the field of prediction of the future. She can predict the trajectory of bullets through the sound of the wind and intuition, avoid the attack of firearms, and to a certain extent, be immune to visual and auditory obstacles. Magic power release. Through the use of magic, she could strengthen her weapon and body. Level A, which allowed the originally weak and powerless female knight to have the strength to easily suppress many strong men. The armor she wore during battle was also weaved by releasing magic from this skill. Leadership B, the ability to govern a country, relying on this ability, can make the morale of the army she leads high. Level B, can manage a kingdom, but can't establish a world-class empire. Chapter 737. Clang. 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 Powerful footsteps, accompanied by the sound of heavy boots landing on the ground, slowly reverberated in the pitch-black space. When the servant saber came out from the shadow behind Shinji Tsushita, the first thing that caught Noah's eyes was the golden hair that was swaying in the moonlight. It seemed to be for the convenience of battle. The golden hair was specially tied behind the head. With such a conspicuous hair color in the moonlight, the girl who looked to be only 16 or 17 years old appeared in front of Noah's eyes. On her body, a blue dress showed the other person's slender body, but she also wore a silver breastplate in front of her body, and there were steel gauntlets on her hands, firmly covering her slender hands together with her fingers. Her feet were the same, with a pair of heavy boots. Such a girl had a majestic aura, as if the surrounding darkness was expelled. Step by step, she walked behind Shinji Tsushita and raised her head, exposing a doll-like delicate face under the scarce light. A pair of gem-like green eyes with an extremely strong determination made people can't help but have a feeling of heroic radiance. Undoubtedly, she was only a 16 or 17-year-old slender girl, but she had a heroic radiance and a fierce aura, which almost made Noah show a surprised expression. Just from the aura and posture, the other party was worthy of the title of hero. However, if one were to judge him based on his appearance, no one would associate him with the word hero. Not to mention, Shinji Tsushita just clearly said that the girl in front of him was a servant saber. So, how could Noah not be surprised? It must be known that the servant saber had the highest requirement for ability value. Generally, only the highest level of heroic spirits could become a servant saber, which could be said to be the highest combat power in the Holy Grail War. As a result, such a servant saber was occupied by a girl who looked very weak. How could Noah not be surprised? Of course, he was only surprised by Saber's appearance. As for Saber's ability points, it clearly told Noah that Saber was worthy of her rank. That was an ability value that was almost the same as that of Hercules Berserker. They were completely on par with each other. As for the precious artifact column, it was an A++ grade that made people's hearts shrink. If they underestimated the other party because of their appearance, they would definitely die a horrible death. Therefore, while Noah became serious, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. How could this be? Why was Saber's ability value so high? As the class with the highest combat power in the Holy Grail War, Noah did not doubt Saber's ability value. However, the servant's ability value was generally dependent on the master's magic power. Saber's master is Shinji Mitsuki, right? Would that guy, who even ran out of magic circuits, have the ability to make Saber's ability points reach such a level? Also, what's with the book in Shinji Mitsuki's hand? Questions after questions made Noah frown deeply. Shinji Mitsuki, who clearly saw Noah's reaction, thought that Noah was afraid, and couldn't help but let out a cunning laugh. How is it? Amazing, right? My servant is the strongest saber, okay? You magicians who look down on me should be scared now, right? Ha 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 ha. Shinji Mitsuki laughed proudly as if he had succeeded. Not only did it make Noah frown deeper, it also made Saber's eyes move, but her face was expressionless. The next second, Saber spoke in a clear voice. "Master, please give me your orders." That voice was completely mechanical, without the slightest bit of emotion. No, it was not that there was no emotion. At least, Noah saw a hint of dissatisfaction in Saber's seemingly emotionless eyes. Dissatisfaction. Was she dissatisfied with her master? Well, it should be said that as a legendary hero, as a heroic spirit, becoming the servant of a person like Shinji Mitsuki would not cause dissatisfaction. Perhaps, only a servant like Ryder, who was willing to listen to orders, would be dissatisfied. This also made Shinji Mitsuki's laughter abruptly stop, and he glared at Saber. "Don't talk to me in such a commanding tone. Have you forgotten who your master is?" How could he scold his own servant and the legendary hero so rudely? This Shinji Mitsuki really did not have anything that was pleasing to the eye. Facing such a Shinji Mitsuki, Saber was still expressionless. Her eyes fell on Noah, and she didn't even look at Shinji Mitsuki. She said so lightly, "No, I have never forgotten who my real master is. So, master, please give me your orders, for victory." These words made Noah frown again. What Saber meant was that she shouldn't have spoken to her master in such a commanding tone, right? But Saber still maintained such a tone to Shinji Mitsuki. What did this mean? "You." Shinji Mitsuki seemed to feel that his face was blocked by Saber, or perhaps he understood what Saber meant, and he suddenly became angry. "You're just a servant, how dare you disobey my orders?" Shinji Mitsuki's words just attracted Saber's sharp eyes. "Even if you are my master now, I am still a heroic spirit that exists as a hero. In the past, I used to rule over thousands of people as a king. If you insult me as a king, even if you have the book of false officials, I will personally punish you." Shinji Mitsuki suddenly let out a disappointing scream, and stepped back, away from Saber. Seeing Shinji Mitsuki's behavior, this time, Saber clearly frowned, and then as if she no longer cared about Shinji Mitsuki, she raised her head and looked at Noah again. "As a master, it's only right for a servant to stay by your side and protect you. Since you made the mistake of moving your servant away from you, you shouldn't have any complaints now that someone has taken advantage of you, right?" Every word, every action, the servant named Saber was like a majestic knight. Undoubtedly, it should not match with the slender appearance, but it gave people a feeling that it was natural. Compared to Shinji Mitsuki, who was a master, it only made people feel that such a master was not worthy of such a servant. So, Noah smiled and said such a sentence. "Since letting the servant accompany you to protect you is the way of action that every master knows, then, do you think that I deliberately transferred the servant away from me is really a mistake?" Hearing this, Saber's eyes slightly narrowed. Ha! Ha! Shinji Mitsuki, who was just scared by Saber, seemed to want to get back his sense of superiority from Noah, and let out a mocking laugh. "Do you think it's useful for you to say these words now?" Noah just raised his eyes and looked at Saber's eyes. "Whether or not I'm trying to be brave, you'll know after you try, Saber's servant." Immediately, Saber closed her eyes slightly before opening them abruptly. She clenched her fist and lifted it up, causing a sharp and oppressive gale to appear. It stirred up the sound of air being sliced apart as it pointed at Noah. "Then let me try." The moment the words fell, Saber's body bent down. Dong! Saber, who turned into a bullet, violently shot in the direction of Noah's direction, her hands in the air, as if she was holding a weapon, and fiercely swung at Noah's head. Noah, who felt that something was wrong, took a step back. Clang! The next moment, a sword light flashed. Chapter 738. Clang! When the gorgeous sword light flashed through the space, the entire place where the sword light passed by seemed to be cut by something, everything became chaotic. Rip! Noah, who had taken a step back in time, happened to be in the range where the sword light flashed. However, the clothes in front of him were ruthlessly slashed through. With a clear tearing sound, a tear appeared on his clothes. Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly moved his toes on the ground. After putting some distance between them, he glanced at his clothes, which had been torn apart. He then looked at Saber, who was in front of him, and his eyes flickered. Over there, Saber was still in a slashing posture with a weapon in her hand. She adjusted her posture and raised her hand. "Did you dodge? You seem to be an excellent warrior." Upon hearing Saber's unabashed praise, Noah did not respond. Instead, he glanced at Saber's hand, and a look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. With his sensory ability, Noah could clearly feel that there was a sword in front of him. At that moment, there was a sword in Saber's hand. However, without his sensory ability, Noah could not even see the shape of the sword. He could only vaguely feel that there was a chaotic wind blowing on it, completely covering Saber's sword. An invisible sword. "Don't say that I'm despicable." Saber pursed her lips and smiled, but her eyes were shining brightly. "As a battle tactic, this is very effective." After saying that, Saber tightened her grip on the hilt of the invisible sword. With a loud stomp, she charged forward. The sword in her hand cut through the air like a silver sword light. It carried a strong wind that caused the air to fluctuate as it slashed down at Noah. The sharpness of the invisible sword sliced through the air beneath it. The sharp sound of the sword was like a scream in the air. It was extremely terrifying. Although Noah was a little surprised by the invisible sword, it was not to the extent that he could not react. Even if it was invisible to the naked eye, Noah could clearly sense its existence and even the trajectory of its slash. Whing. Thus, with a vibration, traces of magic emerged from Noah's limbs. Like a catalyst, lines of magic spread out along Noah's limbs. The strengthening from the enhanced magic made Noah's 4 limbs more powerful than before, making Noah calm down. He felt the sword that was slicing towards him, and when it was only half a meter away from his head, he gently moved a step to his left. Clang! The sword that could not be seen by the naked eye suddenly slashed down. Amidst a clear sword hum, it brushed past Noah's shoulder in a thrilling manner. The moment the sharp sword missed, Noah's left hand suddenly moved slightly. Then, he slapped to the side. Paw! The seemingly casual slap of the hand actually caused a sound of impact at the moment when the invisible sword was about to land. It was the sound of Noah's hand slamming heavily on the blade of the invisible sword. Suddenly, a powerful force burst out, causing the invisible sword and Saber to tilt to the side. For a moment, Saber's awe-inspiring momentum seemed to have stagnated because of Noah's slap. She was surprised. Had his sword been seen through? No. Compared to the problem of her sword being seen through, Saber was more surprised that Noah, as an ordinary person, could actually keep up with her attack. Whing! While Saber was still in shock, Noah pulled one of his hands behind his back and clenched it tightly, causing the air around his fist to vibrate. A beautiful airflow gathered into the shape of a whirlpool and covered his entire fist. Like an extremely heavy hammer, Noah's arm immediately shook, and the heavy fist, with a terrifying oppressive wind, smashed toward Saber's chest. This time, Saber reacted instantly. Traces of magic quickly gathered in one of her hands, covering the entire steel gauntlet and holding it to her side. The heavy fist suddenly landed on the steel gauntlet, colliding with the hard steel. Clang! The fist and the gauntlet collided fiercely, causing a crisp sound of steel clashing to be heard at the point of contact, causing waves of shockwaves to appear in the surroundings. The two people who collided shook at the same time, as if they were rebounded by the shockwaves. With a muffled sound, they were both pushed back, creating a distance between them. After stabilizing her body, Saber raised her head and looked at Noah, who was also pushed back by the shock waves. Her expression changed slightly. This person could actually collide head-on with a servant. No. Impossible. Not far away, Tong Shinji was shocked by Noah's strength, which was not in the same dimension as him. After he reacted, as if he couldn't accept it, he shouted at Saber like a madman. Hey! What are you doing? Hurry up and defeat him. Saber took a deep breath of the cool air. She stared at the calm Noah and directly ignored the unreasonable Shinji Mitsuda as she spoke in a deep voice. Your Excellency has such skills, which is admirable. I take back what I said just now. Letting the servant leave your side is not because of your lack of strategy, but because you do have the ability to deal with all situations without relying on the servant. With such a sentence, Saber once again raised the completely invisible sword and pointed it at Noah. In that case, I will also use all my skills. This is the greatest respect I can give you as a knight who can't announce my name in the duel. Hearing this, Noah just leaned his body and clenched his fist. Although it is not my intention to fight here, after all, the recent battles have been too frequent. But since the servant said so, if I don't take it seriously, it would be rude of me. Come at me. Then. Saber clenched the hilt of her sword and looked at Noah with narrowed eyes. I won't hold back. After a moment, Saber's body suddenly leaned forward a little, her feet suddenly stomped on the ground, her whole body spun, and slashed forward. Whoosh! Suddenly, as Saber swung her sword, the invisible sword in her hand suddenly burst into a whirlwind, bringing with it a whistling wind and a sense of oppression. It was like a burst of shock wave that suddenly spread out, passing through the obstacles of space and violently swept toward Noah. The sudden attack made Noah's eyes flash with a touch of surprise, but his face did not show much alarm. His hands suddenly clenched into fists again, and he did not retreat but instead moved forward. Noah landed heavily on the ground with a muffled thud. His tightly clenched fist was covered by a faint golden vortex as he violently threw a punch at the wave of wind that was rushing towards him. Noah's annihilation strike originally used the shock wave caused by the vibration of his arm, and then covered the shock wave on his fist, and then punched out. Boom! So, at the same time when Noah punched out, a burst of shock wave shook like a cannonball, and fiercely collided with the shock wave. Bang! The two shock waves collided with each other, causing a ripple in the air. It was like a violent gale, carrying an astonishing impact force that spread out in all directions. It shook the ground, causing some gravel and cracks to appear. At that moment, Noah's whole body was shaken by the fierce aftermath of the collision of the two shock waves, and he was forced to take a few steps back. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and after distancing himself from the center of the shock wave for some distance, he stabilized his body and stopped. Whoosh! At that moment, a slight sound of something breaking through the air was heard, causing Noah's expression to change, and he suddenly raised his head. There, a blurred shadow was eerily like a ghost, flashing above Noah's head. With her nimble body, Saber took advantage of the moment when Noah had just stabilized his body, and flashed forward, waving the sword in her hand. Chapter 739. Clang! The crisp sound of a sword suddenly rang out in the air, drawing a long sword light. It was like a silver moon cutting through the sky, instantly illuminating the surrounding pitch-black space. With the invisible sword in her hand, Saber directly caught the moonlight and slashed at Noah. The dazzling sword light even made Noah's eyes suddenly shrink, and he subconsciously squinted. Of course, the effect on his vision was not enough to make Noah unable to react. After all, Noah still had superb sensing ability. At that moment, Noah simply closed his eyes, and his palms suddenly clenched into a fist. A pale golden vortex of air swirled around his fist, and as it contracted, the luster of the silver moon-like sword light actually paled in comparison. 1 gold. 1 silver. The two flashes of light dispelled the darkness in the entire park, and shone in the space. Just as the golden fist and the silver sword light were about to collide, Saber, who was mercilessly slashing at Noah, suddenly changed her expression and abruptly stopped swinging her sword. Her whole body was suspended in the air, and she once again fell to the ground. Seeing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, and almost subconsciously stopped his attack. He abruptly stopped the annihilation strike that was about to be swung out, and the fist covered with the bright vortex of air suddenly stopped in front of Saber's delicate face. The wind that it carried caused Saber's dazzling golden hair to dance in the wind. Just like this, Noah and Saber simultaneously stopped their attacks at the last moment. Noah's fist was right in front of Saber's face. Saber's invisible sword was almost on Noah's shoulder. It was a close call. Noah, who did not expect Saber to suddenly stop, frowned deeply. "You! What are you doing?" Tong Shinji, who was hiding at the side, actually scolded. "Hurry up and take care of him." However, Saber did not even care about Tong Shinji's reaction, and she did not care about Noah in front of her. Instead, she forcefully turned her head and looked in one direction. At that moment, a dazzling brilliance enveloped Saber's slender body, causing the outline of her body to fluctuate. Starlight particles appeared around her, and as if they were contracting, they gathered on Saber's body. Saber was a little surprised, but soon seemed to have understood something, and revealed a stern expression. In the next moment, Saber disappeared from the spot. Yes. Along with the dazzling brilliance, she disappeared from the spot. Noah was stunned on the spot, but the next moment, he immediately reacted and exclaimed. Teleportation. Teleportation of the command spell. Although Noah had never used the command spell before, nor had he seen anyone else use it, he could feel the spatial fluctuations before Saber disappeared. There was no doubt that it was teleportation-based teleportation. And looking at Saber's performance just now, it was obviously not her own doing. Then, other than the teleportation of the servant using the command spell, Noah could not think of any other factor that could make Saber, who had the highest level of magical power, uncontrollably teleport away. However, wasn't Saber's master Tong Shinji? If someone used the command spell on Saber and summoned Saber to his side, that person should be Tong Shinji, right? And Tong Shinji was here, right? Coupled with Saber's asymmetrical ability value and her attitude towards Tong Shinji, Noah could understand it no matter how stupid he was. There was something wrong with this matter. Damn it. On the other side, Tong Shinji seemed to understand what was going on before Noah, and he shouted angrily. That woman. She said she was not interested in the Holy Grail War. She said she did not want to be master at all. In the end, didn't she summon the servant back? Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. While venting his anger as if no one was around, Tong Shin raised the book in his hand. Come back here. You useless servant. I'm your master. Amidst Tong Shinji's angry roar, the thick book in his hand began to flicker with the light of magic. However, at this moment, a beam of light made of magic power cut through the space, rubbing against the air, and like a laser, it fell on the hand of Shinji Mitsuki who was holding the heavy book. Suddenly, Tong Shinner didn't even have time to react. His hand that was holding the thick book, along with the book, was vaporized by the magic light beam. Ah! Tragic cries of pain resounded throughout the night sky of the park. It hurts. So painful. It's so painful. Tong Shinner held his shoulder that was charred and fortunately stopped bleeding, but his entire arm had disappeared. Tong Shinner rolled to the ground. The intense pain caused this fellow, who was constantly dragging down the evaluation of others, to roll on the ground. As he rolled, he cried desperately. His face, mucus and tears were all gushing out. Even saliva was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. That cry, that performance, he didn't have any backbone that a man should have. It was extremely disgusting. My hand. My hand. Shedding tears, drooling, and sniffling, Tong Shinji kept rolling back and forth on the ground. Because of the severe pain, his face was twisted into a disgusting look. His crying was even worse than if his parents had died. Looking at all this indifferently, Noah expressionlessly came in front of Tong Shinner, who was rolling on the ground. Looking down at this clown, he felt that it was unforgivable to waste time with him, so he directly spoke. The book just now, the book that Saber called the Book of False Officials, you seem to want to use that book to control Saber, right? Noah's voice was directly ignored by Tong Shinner, or it should be said that it couldn't enter Tong Shinner's ears.